Chris.
Heath.
Hey, how we doing?
Pretty high energy today.
Good. That's how I like it.
There's a lot to cover.
So I have some fun things that I do want to bring up, but do we have some email today too?
We have the whole shebang today.
Okay.
We're going the full 9 yards.
Good. How are you? Just in general.
Pretty good. Pretty jazzed to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And where are we exactly, Heath?
Oh, well, we are on set of Mobius Tubes, episode 19.
And just for the record, today is July 7th of 2019, the day we are recording.
Mm-hmm.
We had a bit of a longer gap than usual between episode 18 and 19, which is to your benefit just because there's going to be so much to talk about today.
There is so much to talk about. It's currently the Steam sale for this year.
Yeah, it's winding down, but still active at the moment.
I haven't really taken advantage of it yet. There's actually a game that I wanted to play that was free on the Epic Store.
Oh.
I wanted to pick up Enter the Gungeon.
Yeah.
Did you play that at all?
I have not played it, but I have it on my Epic Store account.
Okay, when did you pick that up? Because when I went to go look at it, it said that it wasn't free during the time that I saw it. Like, I think it's overcooked right now. You know that Diner Dash-esque game?
Yeah, the co-op game that you need to really communicate well, otherwise you're going to hate your co-op partner. Yeah, Enter the Gungeon was a couple of weeks ago. I'm sorry you missed the window there. I have not played it, though.
To be fair, isn't it like $7? Like, Devolver's really good about keeping their games like accessible and you know, if you ever wanted to pick up Ape Out. Have you seen Ape Out?
Yeah.
That's a fun looking game.
All my enthusiasm, I actually knocked my headphone cord out of the jack, so I need to plug that back in really quick.
Let's go for it. Is it not close enough? Here, let me just tilt that.
Okay, I'm back.
Good. Shall we?
Heath, what kind of entertainment have you been diving into the past couple of weeks?
Well, this was just the cleanup. So, games that I have been playing in weeks past, we have come to a resolution. I finished Red Dead Redemption 2, and I finished Transistor. And I have good things to say about both of them. This is going to be all positive on my end. So,
well, let's get into it.
We'll start with Red Dead. The number one takeaway I had from playing RDR2, the immersion worked. It was pretty good. You're familiar with like immersion in video games, right?
It's one of the big buzzwords out there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But yes.
Sometimes your character will need to eat. They'll get too cold if you're not wearing a big jacket. It's to add to the realism. And sometimes it's not that cool. Like remember DayZ? The zombie mod for Arma, you had to like feed yourself in addition to trying to fend off other opponents and zombies. Like it just felt kind of tacked on, even though it was supposed to be like the survival mechanic. Red Dead does a good job of enticing you to eat. And you've yet to play Red Dead, right?
Yet to play it, but I'm eager to try it.
I will be surprised if you don't end up underweight. So if you go to the player menu in the game, it'll detail, what temperature Arthur is and what his morality is and how much he weighs. And that's all dependent on how much you eat in the game. So you restore health and stamina in Deadeye by eating stuff that you hunt, or just like a can of peaches that you took off the shelf of the people you robbed, your main source of food. I have been underweight for most of the game.
Malnourished.
Yes. So, and this is $18.99. So that nourishment is hard to come by.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, actually, that's not true. I've run over at least a dozen turkeys just traversing the Wild West. Also, I'm not really sure this is the Wild West, because they mention like states in the game, but you're never in like Austin, Texas. It doesn't say like, I'll meet you by the Alamo, John Marston. Okay. although I can say you start the game in Texas-ish. I don't know if this is this is going to be a non-spoiler review of Red Dead.
Thank goodness.
Until you play it. You start the game in Texas, and then throughout the game, you end up in what would be Louisiana, what would be West Virginia. And you'll pick up on that pretty well. There's also Alaska, I found. Like
Whoa.
just up there. Not necessarily frozen winter Alaska, but sort of like there's a moose, there's some plants that I would associate with the far north. Back to me being underweight. I would predominantly heal. Okay, so in the game, Arthur can also get dirty just by like falling off of his horse, which I do often because I'm trying to like beeline to the next objective. So I keep in the wilderness. Venmo keeps getting stuck on rocks, and I get bucked off of him.
Now your horse is now named Venmo?
Oh, yeah. So my second horse I named Venmo.
What happened to Twitter?
Twitter is back in the stables. You know, he was like the I forget what kind of horse he is. He's not an Appaloosa. He's Kentucky Shorewester. I made that up. Venmo is a much faster horse, and I'm going to get to Heath's guide to Red Dead after I talk about my lack of heft. But yeah, so you would get dirty and have to clean yourself just as like it's both a cosmetic thing and how people will like perceive you. You'll look at yourself and you'll be filthy in cutscenes, and it's like, oh, I gotta fix that. So you would go to the town's like bath and order like a scrub a dub, and then after cutscene you're nice and clean. Which is also, you got to keep your horse clean, or he'll take like a little bit of damage every few seconds. So I would go take a bath, and then if my health was low, I would sleep in the town's lodging or whatever. So my major source of healing up was sleeping. I wasn't eating the canned peaches and the cooked venison, because also it takes a while to like cook a venison, and I'm hunting in this game. It's well designed, but unless there was like a legendary beaver that I could get like $50 for, also there's trinkets in this game. So if you kill the alligator with the big tooth, you can bring the big tooth to your local fence. A fence is like a trading post for risque items, the
illicit goods.
Yeah, the store manager won't second guess like your diamond ring that you clearly stole off of Mrs. Braithwaite. Anyway, so you can build these trinkets, and these trinkets, if you have like a perfect squirrel pelt, you could build like a thing that will plus 20% stamina regen, or just like little buffs, which I discovered kind of late in the game. But, I stockpiled all these alligator teeth and squirrel pelts that I could just funnel into the fence. So unless I have like a really prized animal that I want to hunt, I wouldn't really go hunting. So I wasn't eating. So I became underweight. And when you're underweight, it's like minus 8% to all of your like health, stamina, deadeye, all of your stats. And toward the end of the game, it kept getting like worse and worse. And did you ever have a pet, Chris?
Family pets, sure.
Okay. Did you ever have to end up losing a pet, or go through the pet's lifespan and watch it age?
Yeah. I've had pets pass away.
It's really sad, right? And you're like, oh, you're not what you used. You can't hop over that little log in the backyard. Oh, that's so sad. I felt the same way toward Arthur Morgan in Red Dead Redemption 2. There would be a character that was like bullying me, trying to pick a fight. And he would be like making fun of how I've denatured, how I'm not the cowpoke I used to be.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man. So I just started eating lots of food in an attempt to regain my stature. And that's where I'm at in the game. So let's get to my guide, right? Because here are the most important things that you got to know about Red Dead. Your facial hair. So you start the game with no facial hair. but that's not the canonical look as I will describe it. You know John Marston's canonical look? You played Red Dead 1, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's got a little mustache here, he got a little some growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it is the whole game. Not Arthur Morgan. Arthur Morgan has full facial growth, and I can say that you can grow your beard however you like before Chapter 4. Are you writing this down? Just before Chapter 4, you can turn it into like a pencil thing. You can go nuts with it. Because there are missions that a prerequisite is you need to be clean-shaven. And you need to have this outfit. You'll be looking at the general goods store or the tailors in Saint Denis and be looking at the outfits. How do you usually dress up your character? Does Geralt usually wear like a cape, or does Kratos have like a fancy belt that you put him on, or what's the customization you have?
I'm not so much into the fashion. I'm all about the stat bonuses and function over form for me and my characters.
Okay, so you'll put the purple hat on Kratos, even though it looks ugly, if it gets you a plus 0.5% to your weapon and stats.
Exactly, yeah. Aesthetics, who needs them?
So, if you're not like Chris and you like not fashion, but if you look at the outfits in Saint Denis, all of them are kind of like these uppity, like, oh, I wouldn't even catch it. Like an NPC would be caught dead in this. Worry not. You'll get a cool outfit in Chapter 4. That's what I'm saying. After Chapter 4, don't shave. Just let the hair grow out. It is how I believe you're supposed to look. I think Arthur Morgan would have lots of facial hair by the end of the game. I'll just put it that way. Feel free to buy the fastest horse. Don't stick with Twitter all day long. Get yourself a Venmo. There's 3 super fast horses that I've come across. There's like the Arabian one, a black one, and then not a Tennessee Walker. Oh, okay. So anyway, I bought like it only matters what the super fastest one is. I think they're Arabian. You can either buy the fastest horse or get lucky, and there'll be a random event. You know the random events in Red Dead, right?
Yeah, you'll stumble across them in the world.
I was riding Twitter into Saint Denis, and this runaway horse just comes bucking in front of me. And actually, I trip, and we both all fall to the ground. I get up, and it ends up like galloping away. I should have pursued it, because that was one of the fastest horses in the game.
Wow.
And I would have saved like $700. You'll end up with like, I'm in the stage of the game I'm at, I have like $2,000 that ended up like just blowing on weapon customizations later. Also, never buy a gun. You'll get those through the story missions. But I should have gone for this random event horse.
Yeah, that's really cool. You seemingly at random stumbled upon this diamond in the rough horse just out of nowhere. And didn't even fully realize it.
I didn't, and it's so important because I'm riding that thing everywhere. There's the one mission where you have to ride such a long distance that it starts playing this song by D'Angelo something. It's made fun of in the Donkey video.
Oh, okay. Is this like a callback to how in Red Dead 1 you first ride into Mexico?
Mexico, yeah.
Yeah.
And the vocals kick in. Yeah, that's right. It's the same thing here. Gotta get that fast horse. Also gotta get the cool weapon upgrades. So you'll get like the Carcano rifle after you rob the bank or something, and then take it to the gun store and just put all the bells and whistles on it. There's no downside to like lengthening the barrel. I thought that would increase range but decrease the damage or something like that. You know, in other games, customizations like that, there'll be a pro and a con to it. There's no cons. Just add rifling, add improved sights. It'll do because the best part of Red Dead is getting the cool headshots with the red crosshairs, and it'll do slowdowns every time you get like the big knockout. And I've been getting big knockouts more frequently, you know. One more pro that I'll bring up, and then I'll talk about something else. Or you'll get to talk. Are you on this podcast?
I don't know, maybe.
The bait and switch. In other games, or even in Red Dead 1, you would see a little blip on the map with the character's initials who the mission correlates with.
Yeah.
You would go over to the D to go race Dutch.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Or the other letter for like the snake oil salesman.
Right. Yeah. In Red Dead 2, they do a bait and switch. So I can say at least a few times you'll go over to like Reverend Swanson, who you haven't had a mission with since like the beginning of the game. And it's like, oh, okay, hey, Reverend. And then he'll begin to say like, oh, I'm sober now. And then Dutch will come into frame and be like, come with me. And then you'll do like a stealth mission with the Native Americans. And it's like, wow, especially because I only go for what's like closest. So even though Micah is over there and all of his missions are high action, you'll rob a stagecoach, things like that. I was like, that's probably the greater priority mission, but it's all the way at the cactus. I'm gonna go talk to Reverend because he's right here. Whoops! It's the big mission, because added surprise.
Yeah,
that way you'll enjoy that. You'll enjoy Red Dead overall.
I definitely think I will.
Yeah.
It sounds like a Chris kind of game.
Chris stamp of approval. That's right. All right, that's all I had to say about Red Dead 2.
All right. I mean, when you told me on the pre-podcast docket that we were going to be talking about the end of Red Dead 2, I wasn't expecting the topics to be like how malnourished I was and
your mustache length,
my facial hair growth updates. Yeah, interesting stuff.
Oh, okay. So one con I will say for the game, it's tough to navigate menus. You're an achievement hunter through and through. I like me some challenges, and there are challenges that you can fulfill in the game, such as kill 5 birds atop a moving train. And if you do that, you unlock the gunslinger bandolier. That's just, greater ammo capacity, things like that. To see my progress on those challenges, I had to pause, go to progress, tab all the way over to challenges, tab all the way over past the survivalist challenges, past the horseman challenges, past the herbalist challenges, all the way to gunslinger. Click that, move the cursor all the way to the challenge that I'm thinking of. Okay, I got one more bird to go. Back out. Ad nauseum. If that could be fixed, that's probably would have been fixed on like PC because you could just do quick mouse movements. But on controller, on Xbox, how I'm playing,
a little bit cumbersome. It sounds like.
Yeah, but if you play for long enough, you could just keep that in your head. And granted, once you fulfill a challenge, it'll display the next challenge on the screen. Get 3 perfect rabbit pelts. And as long as you keep that in mind and don't not play for 9 days, you'll keep track of things.
Right. And I bet some of those menus, it'll get embedded in your like muscle memory if you're going to the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Shifting gears, but to keep the momentum alive of wrapping up games, I wrapped up Marvel's Spider-Man.
Good.
Over the past couple of weeks.
Uh-huh. How malnourished was Peter Parker?
I never saw him eat a single time, except in one of the DLC add-ons. He ate a pizza.
Well, no, he ate a pizza with Mary Jane.
Oh, you're right. He goes to a restaurant.
Yeah, Stan Lee literally shoves the pepperoni in his mouth.
He's the fry order cook. Yeah. All right. So I guess he's not completely malnourished. Anyway, this is a game where I don't have like a ton to say because...
Can we do spoilers?
And we'll have a timestamp, and I'll announce when we're doing spoilers.
Okay.
But before that,
Taskmaster.
I'll just have to say, this is Insomniac, the studio who made it. They did a great job, but this game, it very much feels to me like just a completely by the numbers. They did a great job coloring inside the lines. They did excellent shading, but at the end of the day, they were still like following kind of the template of a video game that I'm used to after playing so many.
I disagree.
Oh, all right.
Kinda.
Maybe, is this like Do you want to get into it right now about the disagreements you have?
I never played it.
Okay.
But I thought like the boss battle with Shocker and the other one.
Yes,
Vulture.
Shocker and Vulture.
Shocker and Vulture. That was kind of a cool thing, trying to juggle them both. You know, that's not necessarily Batman Arkham, big guy rushes you. You have to batarang him so you can mount him and then rinse and repeat 3 times.
Sure. Some of the boss battles with supervillains, how they team up against you at once, maybe I haven't seen that exact thing done before, but like the mechanics of the fight were still pretty similar to how you've been fighting all game long. Last time, I said the story wasn't doing much to wow me. I had left off right before things like really kick into high gear. So suffice to say, the story did grab me a lot more. Maybe not to the extent where I thought it was necessarily like one of the best stories of 2018, but if I had to like compare it to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'd say it's like a middle of the road story compared to a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
There's many I like more, there's several I like less, but it got the job done. There are some unique twists on Insomniac's own Spider-Man universe here, because they have like free reign to take some liberties with different character relationships you might not expect. They've set up some threads for the sequel that I am interested to see develop. I would bet all the money in the world that in the next 3 to 4 years, there will be a sequel to this game coming out. There just has to be. It was such a big financial success, and they clearly want to make a sequel.
Going back to like that unique character relationships that Insomniac was able to set up, should we just go out and say you start the game as Doc Ock's apprentice?
Yes.
Like that's what you were getting at? Or were you talking about like Mary Jane and Peter Parker not like being estranged?
All of that, yeah. And also some of the stuff going on with the Mayor Norman and his family.
Oh, I totally forgot about the mayor. I don't know. We'll get into it.
Yeah. You know, like, it's an open world game with a whole bunch of side activities spread out across the map. You've got your base battles where you fight like waves of enemies, and you've got your pigeon chases, and you've got your research station traversal challenges.
Oh, with puzzles and whatnot.
With puzzles. And I guess here's one interesting thing the game does. Every one of these different types of side activity rewards you with its own unique currency. They're not all filtering into
Aren't they literally tokens?
Yeah, they're called tokens.
Yeah.
It's like a badge for getting it done. And different combination of these badges you use to unlock all sorts of goodies, like the suits and the upgrades and the new gadgets. Hey, this is Chris in editing with a small correction. I'm about to mention a film a couple times. The movie I actually intended to reference was Spider-Man Far From Home and not Spider-Man Homecoming.
This game's like 10 months old.
It came out
there are still skins coming out.
Yeah. They have some synergy going on with the Spider-Man Homecoming movie. They just put out, I think, 1 or 2 new suits for Spider-Man to wear in this game. I also heard there's like a small Easter egg in the Homecoming movie referencing this game. I think this is the lightest of spoilers. I think Tom Holland, who plays Spider-Man in the movie, makes like the same selfie pose at the top of a building as Spider-Man does in this video game, just as a callback.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. One really cool suit. It's called the vintage suit.
That's the black and white one.
Not
right?
the black and white one.
Or no, it's like it looks the art style is completely out of place.
Yes, it looks like you are a living, breathing comic book character in this photorealistic art style of a world.
It's akin to the Super Mario 64 skin in Odyssey.
Yes, it's kind of like that. You look completely out of place, but it's beautiful to look at.
Hey everyone, this is Heath. Massive spoiler inbound for Marvel's Spider-Man.
Maybe that might detract from some of the more serious cutscenes if you're wearing that.
Uh-huh.
But once I like rolled the credits and I was doing mop up on the side activities, I switched to that suit.
As you were laying Aunt May down in her deathbed and wearing like the glowing
comic book. Yeah.
Also, Aunt May dies.
So I guess we're in spoilers now.
I know. I just wanted to.
Yeah. Let's. What spoilers would you like to discuss, Heath?
okay, well, Taskmaster is probably like the coolest guy.
I mean, he has the hardest side activities, these challenges where you're either like clear this stealth scenario in this very short amount of time or chase down this drone very quickly and try to keep up with it. And if you do all of his stuff, you get the chance to fight him.
But like he ambushes you.
Yes.
And you're like, whoa.
And his whole shtick is that he's been watching you do these challenges and like learning your moves so that he can be better than you.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought that was kind of neat. I wasn't blown away by it.
Okay. I just like the ambushes. I totally got giddy about remembering when Scarecrow surprises you in the Batmans. And then there's stuff in Red Dead that's similar, but I won't go into it.
In the fight with Taskmaster, I did like if you try to use the same move on him too many times, he'll adapt to it, so you'll have to try something new.
That's fun, right? That's also sort of like Mr. Freeze fight.
Yeah, I was just thinking the Mr. Freeze fight from Arkham City.
Did you, in the Mr. Freeze fight, if you take too long, the Bat computer is like, I've calculated how to win, essentially. Did you, like, because I was aware of that before I went into the fight, so I made sure to not get here are the training wheels, you infant. How did that play out for you in Arkham City?
I think it is City.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything about the supercomputer, so maybe I got through it too quickly. Is that what you're saying?
Well, not too quickly. Yeah, aren't there difficulties in that game?
I cannot say at this time.
Because I thought that on the easiest difficulty, you only need to hit Mr. Freeze like 4 times.
Okay.
And then on the hardest, you need to come up with like 10 different ways of attacking him. And like you can imagine, okay, I'll just swoop down from a gargoyle. I'll stealth him just from behind. I'll get him from like the under the ground, like like a trapdoor kind of attack. That's 3, 7 more, and like it's really difficult. But it's, that and Taskmaster were some of like the best things I've seen. Mr. Negative,
Yeah, he was a little I like finally seeing his origin. How did he get these powers? Why does he hate Norman, the mayor, so much? It was kind of interesting to see that. Mm-hmm. But overall, it was good.
So the reason you can't cure Aunt May's cancer is to save everyone that Mr. Negative made black?
No. Okay, so Doc Ock, he takes a bioweapon from the corporation Norman is the head of. He and Doc Ock co-founded this scientific company.
Uh-huh.
Norman has been working on a cure, but he actually mistakenly manufactures a bioweapon called Devil's Breath. Doc Ock steals Devil's Breath, releases it into the public. It spreads really quickly. People are dying. There's an antidote for it. Peter Parker, Spider-Man, he acquires the antidote. There's only a very small sample left. They can either take that sample and then like
amplify it.
Go run tests on it to
but that'll take
manufacture
days.
More. That'll take days. Or he has the chance to like save his aunt with the one sample that exists, but obviously he doesn't take that route.
Mm-hmm.
Too many people would die.
Right. Well, we're going to be playing as Miles in the sequel anyway, so who cares about Parker's family? Yeah, when you're buddying it up with Miles's dad, Cop.
Yeah.
That was fun.
You like you search a warehouse together. Yeah. I mean,
the enemies that like are normal dudes and then they pick up like the Mr. Negative cocaine and then they're like, oh, I'm black and white. Isn't that a thing? Isn't there a buff where they turn into Nega Boys?
What that sounds more like to me is there's one enemy superhero called Tombstone.
Yeah, Tombstone's really cool.
He's cool. He
doesn't die, so he can come back.
His skin got super hard, impenetrable, and they have like this drug, this inhaler that his fellow goons are like inhaling to temporarily get his powers.
But that's not Devil's Breath.
That is separate from Devil's Breath. That's just
dirt.
That's just Tombstone Juice.
Okay, maybe we really don't need this spoiler section because I'm just Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I liked it. And
Kingpin showed up.
he was like the big explosive opening to the game, taking down Fisk.
Yeah.
So I'm touching some of the DLCs they flesh out some side characters, but then it's going to be a wrap on Spider-Man until the sequel. Yep,
satisfactory. But now, in retrospect, I see what you're talking about with the, they innovate in the slightest ways, but it's nothing that you're not familiar with.
Yeah. They executed this very well, but they didn't surprise me to a big extent in any way.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of surprises in a big way, or maybe I just exaggerated. Transistor's final boss. We are also going to do spoilers for this one.
Are we gonna do spoilers right away?
No, let's. Okay. So, what is there to say about Transistor that I haven't already said? Ooh, coming back to that game.
Yeah, I imagine that would be tricky.
Limiters off. Can you explain what the limiters are?
Yeah, so as like a hallmark of the Supergiant games, this is the case in Bastion and Pyre as well. You can
a very specific difficulty rating.
Yeah, I like how they do this approach to difficulty. There's a whole bunch of optional handicaps you can enable that make the game more difficult. But for each one you do enable, you get bonus experience or some kind of added reward for completing the game with these turned on.
Every battle you beat, you'll get experience times the amount that your limiter, if you made it so that the enemies dealt twice as much damage, it'll be plus 4% toward your next upgrade.
Ah, got it.
And having not played it in a while and trying to jump in with the limiters I had set, getting blowed up by, I think they're called haircuts, the late game enemy, where they don't get affected by the love function.
Oh, okay.
Or they're invulnerable to certain functions, and they would just do more than half of my health if they made contact. Granted, they have tiny health, but they move fast. So turn those limiters off. I couldn't compete. I went back to the simplest build. Great game. If you have a PC and you like video games, pick this up. Don't listen to the spoiler section I'm about to go into. If you don't really play video games, I think a lot of people listening do. Some people who are listening that don't really play games, keep listening to this spoiler section because it'll be oh, that's a cool thing that video games can offer. The final boss. Here it comes.
Here it comes.
The final boss. Man, what a human encounter. What I mean by that is it's like a taste of your own medicine. So in Spider-Man, is there ever an enemy that can also web swing?
Not really.
And use that against you, use that kind of mobility? Because when you're fighting a guy and you're in a bad way, can't you just zip out of there as Spider-Man?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, and no one's gonna chase you down because they don't have the Spidey goo. Same thing in God of War. Is there any enemy that also has a magnetic axe that just flies back to you?
I can't say that anyone does, no.
Right, so you as the protagonist have a really good... In Red Dead, there's no enemies that have Deadeye that can slow the game down and just tons of headshots.
Yeah, often in video games, you are at a distinct advantage as the player. You can do something that no one else can.
In Transistor, they flip that on you because you've been schooling these grunts with the turn function that lets you stop time, build manufacture this solution that just kills all the enemies at the same time. What's his name? Royce?
I believe so.
Yeah, Royce, who basically invented the transistor, or he's the logic kind of guy. You fight him in this artificial world, and you both have the transistor, and he's using turn against you. So he stops the game, and you can see him planning out how to deal the most amount of damage to you, and you're I don't like this. Go back, So here's the thing, right? He does his first move and hits me really hard. And then he starts running away because, to get a more strategic position on me. There's also obstacles like below you. And I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna run right up to him because movement costs part of your turn, right?
Right. You have like a certain number of, I'm going to say, quote unquote, like action points to use, and walking around consumes some of them.
Yeah. So I try walking really close to Royce so I can hit him where it hurts. But I take too long, and by that time, because once you've expended a turn, you can't use it right again.
There's a cooldown period. Yeah,
there's a cooldown. So I take too long to walk right up to him because I haven't had to deal with enemies having cooldowns to that point. But I take too long, and he freezes the game again and uses turn on me again, and I'm like, no, because I didn't expect it, and of course. Why would he not? He's not going to wait for me.
No.
He's trying to kill me.
No, he's not. It is such a cool moment, both mechanically, because there's this whole new flip side to the puzzle you've never thought of before. How do I counteract my own abilities?
Mm-hmm. He has my magic sword.
Yeah, and it's a cool moment narratively because it's the final boss. He has the transistor just like you.
The logic narratively. You didn't need during the battle. It's like, it's a win-win for me. Either I beat you and escape and get to use a transistor to make Cloud City whatever I want, or I die and I get to hang out in this place that I don't quite understand. His
attitude throughout the whole thing is really calm and collected, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's a smooth guy. So you say you're in this weird digitized environment.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of like a countryside, is it not? There's plants growing, and
yeah, I think there's buildings in the distance.
And you say there's obstacles you're walking around.
That's dudes that we've recovered or
a
something.
Server farm, I think, with people's bodies in them who have been plugged into Cloud Bank, which is based on your interpretation of the game. A digitized city that people have uploaded their consciousness into.
Oh, that's not people we've been shoving into the transistor, because that's been a thing.
So this is left up to some interpretation, but there's my interpretation is there are different layers of digitizedness.
Uh-huh.
Where is this final fight inside of the transistor?
Yes.
Characters talk about going to the farm, right? And for a lot of the game, you assume that's a euphemism for dying.
But it's actually, as you're describing, it's actually these Total Recall chairs.
That's
Total Recall, right?
I don't know.
Okay,
no.
well, that was originally an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, but they made a new one recently where, yes, you sit in the chair and they matrix you into the digital world where you can be whatever you want to be. You get Westworlded.
Yeah. So the farm...
Does the final fight take place in a depiction of what the real world is like?
That is a common suggestion. Not everyone agrees with it, but yeah, that might be the real world there.
I totally did not realize that until right now.
Yeah. And now at the very end, Red... you win the fight eventually.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk any more about the fight?
No, yeah. So I end up winning the fight. It takes a while, because he gets 3 restarts, just like you.
Yeah. Once you die, he loses a function, and then he respawns.
That might be really interesting, whether or not he loses a function or not. I don't think so, but he does. When you lose your health, it's just -1 to whatever attacks that you had programmed. Same goes for him, I think. And so, yeah, you beat him. The transistor is now even better because you can just process the virus that was infecting the city. You can just tell it to go away and manufacture anything you like. And then you go back to love interest's body and he's all like, what are you doing? And you just,
Yeah, so Red, she thrusts the transistor into her.
She offs herself to be with her loved one.
Suicide. And the end credits roll, and you see a picture of them in the very picturesque, idyllic. There's a barn and wheat fields, maybe.
Death is not the end when you get killed by the transistor.
Yeah, it's not death in the way we think of it. they might be in like a whole separate layer of a digital world, or maybe that's the real world.
So Supergiant Games made this game, and then they made Bastion.
Bastion was first.
Okay, they made Bastion, then Transistor, then Hades.
Then Pyre, and then Hades.
Then Pyre, okay. Why is there no Transistor 2?
They're a team that loves to go into different directions.
I think there ought to have been a Transistor 2. That was such, like, the art direction is great. It's unrivaled. The character design with creeps and jerks and men, really cool. I think there's more you can do. And then just having enemies that can also do turn. I felt like there could have been more of a game. There's more to do with Transistor. Give me a sequel, Chris.
I'm picking up what you're putting down, Heath.
Yeah.
I adore all of their games. That said, Transistor is my favorite of them. Few announcements in the video game world would make me more excited than a Transistor 2. But with all that said,
Pyre, more like buyer. Give me Transistor 2. Hades, more like, hey, this is the place for Transistor 2 to go in their development cycle.
The story they told in Transistor, like, there aren't any loose ends per se. It's pretty open and shut.
I don't think anybody's left alive. Right?
So I don't know what they would possibly do in the Transistor 2.
Just like the Camerata's back. No, I wouldn't want that.
Yeah. So it's in a tough place. I would love to revisit those mechanics again and play another game, but I don't know what they would do from a story perspective.
No, I don't know either. And if they even had like something in consideration to do, I think they would have done it. Point being, if you don't play video games, this is more transformative, right? Like I was talking with like the bait and switch in Red Dead. Being able to subvert your expectations in the way that, the final boss has a means of attacking you that you've been exploiting, and is exploiting it back at you. That's if you can manufacture that in whatever sort of storytelling, or that's something we see in movies sometimes, but in video games it really pays off.
Yeah, to some extent the fight is kind of like a fourth wall break, because like seemingly you've been using this turn all game long, and it's like this very mechanical video gamey thing you're doing, like slowly planning out your turn, and to see it used in universe by someone else is kind of like very surprising, like you said.
Yeah, definitely.
Subverting expectations.
And it executes it so well. Look into it, even if you don't feel like playing it, because it does have like that strategy. If you can't sit there and entertain yourself with the challenge of a puzzle, maybe just look into it.
Right. I'd say Bastion is slightly more approachable since it's all kind of action. Yeah. No turn-based elements to it.
Yeah. And we'll follow up with Hades and see, because I am now on a Supergiant watch.
Yeah. I would love it if you brought either Bastion or Pyre to play.
Okay.
I think they're right up there in terms of quality.
Cool. That's all the games I played.
All right. Well, I have one more. I have two more, but I'm only going to discuss one more.
Okay.
The other one I will save for next week.
Sure. We got plenty
to talk about. I've been playing some Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
What? Like, if you could see my face right now, I'm just like, what? I don't even know. Is this like a character action game? Is it like is it a top down? I have no clue what this is. If I'm going to throw it into a genre, I'd say it's an action adventure game with a heavy emphasis on the puzzle solving element of that. Yeah.
So I guess this game didn't ring a bell for you right off the bat. It's by Ninja Theory is the developer.
Ooh, they made a thing that I know.
I think it's like Enslaved Odyssey to the West.
Oh, dude, maybe I've only heard of Ninja Theory.
Heavenly Sword. They made Heavenly Sword. Ninja Theory has been in the news lately because last year Microsoft purchased them and acquired them.
That's why I've heard them from.
Their new game that was announced during E3 was Bleeding Edge, I believe, the kind of multiplayer-focused melee game.
This looks very God of War. Isn't there even a canoe section in God of War?
There absolutely is a canoe section. The game opens with a canoe section, yes. And, like, God of War is heavily immersed in that Norse mythology. And this game
is heavily in that Blue Man Group mythology.
It's in the Norse mythology as well.
Oh, cool.
I believe Senua, the main character, I believe she's from a Celtic tribe native
I totally inferred it was Japanese. But,
no. She's like native to the British Isles.
Boudica. There's lots of Innis swirls.
Yes, Innis swirls. And this is set in the historical time period of the Norsemen. The Vikings are the Danelaw. They're invading England.
Leif Erikson is NPC.
Yeah.
Triskells is what we should have called them. Innis swirls.
Triskells.
They're Triskells.
So, very similar setting to God of War. Anyway, this game's pretty cool. But after finishing Spider-Man, I had to take a couple weeks off from playing games. I was kind of fatigued, and I attribute it to playing a whole bunch of these open world games back to back. We had Spider-Man. Right before that, we had Breath of the Wild. Right before that, Shadow of War, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So it's refreshing. Senua's Sacrifice is a completely linear game. No side quests to do, no busy work, no collectibles you're swinging around Manhattan to grab. Just straight path. Occasionally there's a branch, but you'll double back and then go down the other route.
Okay.
Now, we haven't even talked about why this game gets brought up, or what this game's hallmark is. And this game is most well known for its depictions of mental health and mental disorders. Because as Senua, you have, I believe the game calls it psychosis. Can we do a fact check on that?
Yeah.
Psychosis. Got it. So, the very first screen you see in the game heavily recommends using headphones, which I don't usually do.
Like Obra Dinn.
Like Obra Dinn. This game literally has voices in your head as you play through it.
Oh, this rings a bell.
You've got voices giving you advice, giving you encouragement, voicing concerns, giving you doubts. The whole spectrum of positive and negative emotions.
You
here.
haven't quick saved yet.
Yeah. It's a really weird experience. They sometimes they provide insight into your surroundings. Sometimes it's just gibberish. And like I said, this is basically mostly a puzzle game. At least in 80% of the time, you're solving puzzles. Some of them have been really pretty cool. You'll approach a gate, and there'll be a symbol, 1 to 3 symbols on the gate. And then to solve the puzzle and unlock the gate, you search through the environment, looking to find natural occurrences of that symbol. So maybe the door has a big X on it. So you look for some crossing branches on a tree, and then you'll line it up and it'll say you unlocked that symbol. Good job. So the puzzles are kind of like a children's Where's Waldo book. You're skimming through the environment, which is really beautifully realized, I might add. This is a small team that made the game, and it has AAA quality visuals to it, especially the main character models. Another cool puzzle, one section of the game, you are fighting, or you're trying to reach this god of illusions. So his whole forest is visual trickery and illusions, and things that might not be there are there. And there will be
Chris Angel is a boss.
So there will be archways that you peer through, and as long as you're peering through them, you see things the way they actually are. And then if you step through the archway, it'll actually change your reality. So there might be a staircase where there wasn't one previously.
Oh, wow. Is this Antechamber?
Is that a game?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with Antechamber.
Okay, well, that's another game that has sort of perspective changing. Granted, it's just a full blown portal looking thing.
Oh, but, yeah.
Surely you've seen something like this, where if you, from your perspective, if you can look at the.
This game looks like it plays with perspective in a very interesting way.
Yeah, you'll round the corner and you'll walk backwards and end up somewhere different, things like that.
Yeah, maybe this probably takes it to a greater extent than Hellblade is doing it, but similar idea.
Although, to Senua's credit, that sort of changing perspective thing is a lot easier to do in like a 2D game or a game like Antichamber where the walls are all white. This God of War looking game you're saying is achieving these Harry Potter movie level illusions in glorious PS4 graphics?
Antichamber looks very minimalist. Well, this is like striving for photorealism. These gritty wooded environments and like damp coast sides with like
soggy Scotland,
wrecked Viking ships and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, much more difficult to pull it off in this kind of heavily visual game. Speaking of visuals, to like add to this psychosis, you suffer from mental hallucinations. So sometimes looking at like a fire burning, it'll do something really like
add like an enemy.
Or
just like flare your visuals.
It's hard for me to describe. Just there's some funky hallucination stuff going on as well. So I said it's like 80% puzzle solving. That other 20% though is combat. Mm-hmm. And there's sword fighting in this game, and it's it's pretty like standard stuff. It's heavy on the looking for like tells to see what the enemy's about to do. If the enemy's winding up, you can dodge out of the way or try to parry. If the enemy has a shield, you'll want to kick that out of the way first. Mm-hmm. Stuff we've seen before. The interesting take on the combat though is this game is a very like personal one. So to reflect that, the camera of the game is zoomed in very close on Senua's back. Your field of view is kind of limited. So when a fight breaks out, it's tough to keep enemies in your periphery. I've only fought like 3 guys at once, but that is tough to do. It's tough to like keep your eye on them. They will constantly be circling around you. And then
are they going to have Spider-Man like watch out for this sword swing?
You don't have any spider sense, but so
you think a girl who has hallucinations, it'd be a perfect excuse to put a warning, like shield kick inbound.
They have a solution to it. The voices in your head will warn you when things are behind you.
Oh.
And I mean, like, on one hand, I don't know how people feel about gamifying an aspect of mental illness into like a gameplay mechanic, but for the purposes of the gameplay, it's actually a lot of fun.
Uh-huh.
And they'll be like
the voices in your head. Oh, you're a piece of shit. You know that? Oh, there's a collectible in the corner though.
So yeah, combat is pretty stressful. It's like nail biting because it's like I said, people are not always in your vision. They're circling around you. And the game is like pretty unsettling content wise. The enemies design, they're pretty creepy looking. The environments are scary. Some of the events that you slowly learn about what happened to Senua and why she's going on this journey are pretty graphic. So from a story perspective, I'm interested. It's been a little bit of a slower burn than I'd like. I'm waiting for like the big revelations to come if and when they do. And overall, impressions are positive. I like it.
A really illuminating thing that this game is sort of doing. When we think of mental illness, or at least when I think of it like almost exclusively in modern context.
I was having a similar thought.
Aside from, granted, you'll have an Outlast asylum where you're walking through with a video camera as your like means of discovery. That's still very modern. And although there will be maybe some like Lovecraftian mental illness, like those are still kind of modern. This like was Magna Carta levels of prehistoric. And to think that no one had mental illness back then is ludicrous.
Right. It would still occur. If I had to guess a time period, I'd say it's like between 800 to 1000 AD, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And like, it's not a...
I'm trying to think of all like the medieval era games that I've I'm familiar with. And aside from, a crazy heretic and things like that, I never really thought of like, oh, there's like everyday people who have, just like mental disorders.
Right. Yeah, this game, I super appreciate the game's premise, taking what in and of itself is kind of a taboo subject for a video game, mental illness, and inserting it into a context that you wouldn't really expect to see it portrayed in, this Celtic Dark Age scenario here.
Yeah.
And like, it's not a small deal to have that illness in this time.
It's no amnesia, even though it takes place in a castle.
Right. Like, this is a serious condition she has. I think, if I'm putting the pieces together right, she's in exile, living by herself because of
like the townsfolk are like, get away.
Yeah,
crazy
superstition and like occult. They don't understand what is happening to her. So she has very like grim, real consequences for that.
Well, okay, this is all like, I'm happy to hear this. And I will be even happier if by the time you wrap this game, there's no point in which like the voices are like, download the microtransaction, buy our skins. Like,
I don't think there's any DLC.
Buy the loot crate, you bitch.
Yeah, so I like it. I'm not itching to play more of it. I'm not dying to see it to the end, but I do like it a lot for like the novelty of it.
Yeah. I'm very happy, like you brought, because I would have never have heard about this unless you brought it up, and that's cool.
Yeah. Sweet.
So, when we come back, we should talk more about some of the news, and we have some bits, and we have some email. We got tons of show.
Yeah, what's our runtime right now?
We're at an hour.
Okay, this is going to be like a 2-hour one.
This will be dense, so we'll see you after the break.
Hey, Heath.
Hey, we're back.
We're back, and I have you weren't expecting this, but I have a quick subject I want to throw in here.
Okay.
We just finished talking about how you finished Red Dead Redemption 2. You finished Transistor, and I finished Spider-Man.
Yes.
And
are we going to rank them or what?
No. I just wanted to maybe do a quick little topic discussion here of how that's not what the typical consumer, the typical video game player does. We're kind of...
Oh, I know where this is going.
out of the average there.
Finishing games.
Finishing games is not something that happens a ton.
Who has like 60 hours to burn?
Where I got this idea to quickly discuss this came from I think it's an IGN Unfiltered podcast interview with Amy Hennig.
I've heard of that name.
Who, she is one of the more prominent game directors / script writers, most popularly known from her work on the Uncharted series at Naughty Dog. And during this interview, she kind of expressed some concerns about video game storytelling potential when such a smallish fraction of the audience is actually seeing these games through to the conclusion.
Actually finishing the game, yeah.
And I brought a couple statistics for you. Statistics that I was able to do some quick cross-referencing for, because these days video games have achievements, and when you beat the game, you'll unlock this achievement. And this generation...
that's a perfect indicator of how many people actually do it.
On both Xbox and PlayStation, they started showing you like a global percentage of players who have this achievement. So we can have like a pretty good ballpark estimate to see like of the people who have played this game, how many saw it through to the end.
Okay, you don't have specific by game stats, do you?
I have a couple.
Ooh, okay, time for me to guess.
Yeah. So some of these I was able to check myself, and for the rest of them, I got them from GameRevolution.com that was published on January 29th of this year, 2019.
Okay, yeah. And even if the source wasn't as reputable as that, this is well reported that folks don't finish what they start.
Right. I cross-referenced their numbers for the ones that I was able to look at, and they were within 1% error. So their numbers seem pretty reputable to me. I brought some of the ones we did today. So Red Dead Redemption 2.
Okay.
How many percent of players do you think finished that?
Percent of play. Yeah, so not even. I mean, because there's probably even some people that buy the game and don't even boot it up just because.
Those players, I don't think would be factored into this because in order for the game to register you, you have to hit the start screen.
Okay, so people who beat the tutorial and then shelve it so they can play more Rocket League on,
players who have at least hit launch on the game screen.
I will say, I think a third of the people who start Red Dead Redemption 2 actually finish it. Maybe 33%.
As of January, the number was 22%.
Okay. That's less than I thought it would be.
Here's another one from last year. Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Another very long game. Even bigger than Origins, I've heard.
Wow, that's, yeah. The Greek one.
The Greek one, yeah.
Okay. Assassin's Creed, you can once you get in the swing of things for Assassin's Creed, you pretty steadily just drive through it, I would think. So it's gotta be more than Red Dead. So take that 22, cut it in half, and then multiply it by 3. So we'll go 55. I think more than half beat Odyssey.
55.
Yeah. I'm gonna say 55. Just ever so slightly above half.
You were right, more than Red Dead Redemption 2. That's for sure.
But
it was only 24.6%.
Wow. Still
just a hair shy of a quarter.
Why even put anything after the first hour of the game?
We'll talk about that. Yeah. Here's a more promising one. Impressive. Persona 5, one of the longer JRPGs out there.
If you bought Persona 5, you're gonna finish it.
Oh, you think there's some purchasing bias here?
Yeah. No one who's as enthusiastic about the Persona series, that's like talking about if you're a fan of Dishonored, and you buy the spin-off, the very specific spin-off series where it's what's your name in Dishonored? Are you Arlo Murderface?
Corvo Attano.
Yeah, Corvo Attano. If you buy the Corvo Attano love letter to that one character, and or Wonderful 101. Did you hear about that Wii U game?
Yeah, it's by Platinum Games.
Is it? Yeah, it is the definitively the best worst selling game. No other game as good as that sold fewer copies.
That's
so if you're gonna buy Wonderful 101, you're gonna beat it. Same goes for Persona 5. I say 60%. I'm still thinking more than half.
I actually was able to check this number right before coming over here. So this is a live number.
Fresh.
34.9%.
Guys, save your money if you're not going to beat this stupid thing.
So that's over a third at least. But yeah, so that's a pretty...
Over a third.
That's a drastic...
It's the first one over a third.
That's a drastic jump over the other two, which I think you were hitting the nail on the head. It's a more kind of a niche appeal in that game. So probably a smaller number of people who are more dedicated.
Your neighbor who buys the Madden, the Call of Duty, and the Pokemon, your big things, is not gonna bother with Persona unless they're a dedicated fan.
I have one more for you.
Okay, good. I'm gonna try to actually get this.
My hint on this one is
it's a hint.
It's the highest percentage we've seen yet.
Wow, I've been steadily going up and getting burned.
Marvel's Spider-Man, the game I just beat.
Is higher than Persona?
Higher than the previous 3, yeah.
But it goes against what we just said. It has the broadest appeal.
It has very broad appeal, which makes the number
as broad as Red Dead,
which makes the number even more surprising.
And it's long.
It's not Red Dead long, but it's
30 hours.
I'd say low to mid 20s.
Oh, really? Oh, well. Huh. What was Persona?
Persona was 34.9.
Yeah, we're gonna go 35. That's my confidence in Spider-Man.
Well, it actually hit 51%.
Astonishing.
Yeah. So there were some articles coming out that said like Spider-Man is a surprisingly high percentage of people finish this. It's kind of like it's near the top of the top.
We needed an anthropologist.
Much better than
this
that.
This is unexplainable.
Yeah, it's one of the best-selling games on the PlayStation, and half of people finished it.
And Red Dead is one of the best-selling games. I'm making things up. It sold well.
Very well.
How come because Spider-Man is very popular, and more popular than like Red Dead Redemption, but is the popularity the reason behind like, twice as many people that finished Red Dead will finish Spider-Man? Granted, should we go back to like the main point is like, why bother develop content past the 10-hour mark?
And it's been well documented for some games. The developers spend a disproportionate amount of time polishing the opening hours of the game because they know there's going to be a huge drop-off of players after that point. So they want to make sure they put their best foot forward for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I want to discuss any concerns or implications about how, like, at best, a developer can hope that maybe half of the players will see their whole game. From like a storytelling perspective, if I am an up-and-coming writer who has potential, has talent to write a cool story, knowing these numbers, knowing these facts, I wouldn't go anywhere near developing a video game story if a fraction of the players are going to see my whole narrative arc.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put my story in a medium where they will see it all, like a movie or a book. I don't want people to disregard more than half of my whole, like all of my work and effort and blood and sweat and tears. They're not going to see it. And I'm worried that...
But that's not...
I'm worried that these numbers, the fact of our reality is that we discussed at length earlier, I think video games have great storytelling potential. I'm worried these statistics are preventing us from reaching that potential.
Oh, you're kind of chicken and the egging the situation. Like, how come things are like this? Well, because the players don't bother with the last half of the game.
Yeah.
How come? Why don't they? Oh, because the stats are like, things are influencing each other, or they're like having a compounding effect. Is that what you're trying to say?
I like the chicken and the egg analogy.
Mm-hmm. I am having a hard time trying to say it. Like, the reason that few people follow through with the game is because the writers are front-loading their games. But why are they doing that? Oh, because players are playing like only the first half. But that's because the writers are front-loading. Like, it's sort of recursive in its logic.
That aspect is definitely at play. There's the other side of the coin too, where there's a big vocal outcry, more so in video games than any other medium I know of, where people go like, well, how long is this game? And like, people see good value for money buying that Skyrim because they know it's a 100-hour game. That's
right.
That's a bullet on the box. That's a selling point.
It's like how much dollar per hour of fun. Like, that was a metric at one point.
I've heard people online say like, I won't buy a game unless I'm getting $1 per hour of gameplay.
Yeah, you've heard it.
And I think that's a horrible metric to go by. Anytime you go to a theater and spend $10 or more on a ticket, no movie is 10 hours long.
Right.
And you don't fault the movie for that. So people have made it very clear to developers that they are incentivizing them. We want our games longer and more full of content. And that makes it harder to tell a coherent story over that inflated, bloated, longer playtime.
Because there's some escort missions in there.
They're escort missions and collectibles.
Yeah.
And there's the paradox of people saying we want these games brimming with content. And then, as we can see, a fraction of people are actually touching it.
They dine and dash, yeah.
So is it a vocal minority demanding the longer games? The interview, Amy Hennig, she expresses concern over the games as a service. which further erode the ability to tell a compelling story. Think of BioWare's Anthem. BioWare, a studio known for its stories in Dragon Age, Mass Effect, Baldur's Gate. And now I don't think I hear anyone praising Anthem's story, but Anthem is one of those, lifestyle games that you can play indefinitely, which seems to be at odds with storytelling in games.
Going back to what you said about if you were a writer, you would stay away from video games, knowing that like the medium's not well suited for no one will see like the act 2 and 3 of your story. Well, that's only true for like the 90%, but I think like there are games whose stories are so good that they keep getting remaster after remaster. Final Fantasy VII. Yeah, I know very little about that game other than the fact that people are clamoring so hard for the story. Like, wasn't there once a celebration around the release of like Final Fantasy 13 or whatever, and one lucky fan got to meet the developers of that game, and oh, you're so excited. What do you have to say to the Mitsuda or whatever his name is? Maybe Mitsuda is the name of the guy who made Final Fantasy. But anyway, this one fan all he said was, "Please remake Final Fantasy VII." And walked away. And it's like, wow, that game must have had the best story if it's getting remaster after remaster. Or am I saying it's getting at least one remaster? I know that.
Broken into who knows how many episodes.
Yeah, indefinite parts. Yeah, so most writers should stay away from games by that logic that no one's going to see past Act 1. If you're a dynamite writer, go for it, because people are clamoring for that game's experience. Like, good, although that is just to say, if you're a good writer, people want to read it. Like, I don't really have a point.
I think maybe your point was this. Of the people who do see these games through to the end, it inspires this like kind of really passionate enthusiasm for it, because games have these longer run times, and if you saw it through to the end, there's some base level of investment that had to be present there.
Oh, you're thinking sunk cost?
I'm thinking that
because the players who get to like the 80% mark, they're not going to jump ship. They're going to try to finish it.
I'm just thinking like of the percentage of players who do finish it, right there, that's guaranteed to be your most invested group of people who obviously loved what they got to play.
Right.
So they're going to be vocal about their love, presumably, and be very happy when Final Fantasy VII remake finally comes out.
Getting back to the games that we played, it's for sure I would not have beat Red Dead by now had I not had the podcast to talk about it. Like,
okay.
It would have stayed on the shelf for like a considerable amount of time longer if I was not motivated to talk about the facial hair and the underweight. But definitely, yeah, it sucks that fewer than half. Do you think that's just because there's so much content on YouTube where you can just like watch all the boss battles and watch people speed run it and be like, oh, well, now I know the ending. I don't really necessarily have to play through it, load screens and all.
Yeah,
it has to be a factor, but not enough to say, oh, if we didn't have Let's Plays, 100% of people would get to the end.
I think probably the biggest factor is just people are busy and games take a long time to finish. There's just not enough hours in the day to see it through. Maybe a small factor is that finishing a book is kind of a guarantee. You'll see it through to the end if you just keep reading it. If I pick up Sekiro, I might not ever reach the end.
It might so difficult.
It requires me to actually improve at the gameplay. If I hit play on a movie, it's going to see itself to the end no matter what. Not the case if I turn
it's
on...
a passive piece of entertainment.
Right. If I turn on a From Software game, there's a decent chance I never see the ending because I don't physically have the capability to get to the end.
You got to get good.
Yes.
You're already good at watching movies.
I'm the best. Yeah, so maybe that's a small fraction of people who just are not able to get to the end due to physical limitations, whether it's a disability and they're either unwilling to get good enough or not able to get good enough.
Do you remember back in the single digit episodes when I mentioned Angry Joe Show's 4 hours meme? Where
4 hours later,
one of his like contentions with like certain games, he would say like the campaign is only 4 hours long, and there's compilations of him saying it.
I do, yes.
That can now be taken as instruction. He's asking that now you should be making 4-hour games considering how few people get to the end.
I think it's a valid point. Like we both played Firewatch this year. Do you think the story would be better if there was an extra 10-hour segment where you're picking up collectible like backpacks around the woods?
No, I wouldn't care to rappel down another mountain.
Right. Yeah, the game was as long as it needed to be.
Yeah.
It didn't need any extra padding. And it was like a 3-hour game or something?
Yeah, about that time.
We already talked longer than I was expecting to on this subject.
Well, that was a good surprise bit that just a wild bit appeared.
Yeah. I need to drink some water.
Go for it.
Moving on.
Yeah, I tried to do... So remember when I said... what did I say? A wild something appeared?
A wild bit appeared.
Yeah, a wild bit appeared. That was going to be my Pokemon segue. But we have some corrections to do.
Oh my gosh.
Before we go into the news.
What happened?
Well, all right. So remember how I joked about in last episode's featured piece about leaks in the games industry. We talked about Jason Schreier and the other guy. And remember how I ended it with Jason Schreier will be burnt at the stake this time. I totally forgot how in episode 13 I cited his article on Anthem. So everybody, false alarm, Jason's public immolation will have to be postponed because I totally forgot that the guy that I had content I made for the podcast based on his article, I can't take that and also burn him at the stake for what he's tweeted about.
We need to give him credit where credit is due. Yeah. He does a lot of very good work.
He does, yeah. I totally looked into it. So that was the only correction I had. On to the news. The first funny news that I came across was Samurai Showdown versus Epic Games. Are you familiar with this story?
I did a very cursory look into it, but I need the details here.
Okay, so Epic Games has been trying their best to snag all of the video game exclusives they can. That's like their model right now, right?
Much to my despair, yes. They are trying to lock down games to only be sold on PC on their storefront.
They're taking their Borderlands, and then they're taking your...
Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human.
Oh, yeah.
Journey, Masquerade, Bloodlines 2.
So, they go up to Samurai Showdown, the fighting game that most recently appeared on EVO's list of tournament games. And they're like, hey, Samurai Showdown, you're just a small fighting game. Would you like hundreds of thousands of copies worth of your game just to be exclusive on the Epic Store? And the developers of Samurai Showdown go, why would we take a PC deal for hundreds of thousands when we're going to sell millions? And everybody listening to this story is like, what? Samurai Showdown's not going to sell millions?
That does seem awfully optimistic to me.
It's the confidence on these guys.
I have to give them credit for believing in their product. That's good on them.
Well, yeah, their confidence made me want to consider getting Samurai Showdown, because I've also been hearing really good things about how the game is made for like upsets. You're gonna have really hype gameplay that's gonna happen at Evo. But definitely, Kuroki, one of the guys there, explained, I know that there is a big expectation from outside as well as the company, but he is confident in the perfection of the game. is his reason behind that. It's just astonishing the way, like, if someone asked us, hey, Chris and Heath, we want to buy your podcast and make it exclusive on whatever, Spotify or whatever like that, and we'll pay you up front like this much. That would have to be in our consideration, right? We have to take things into account. If you're Samurai Showdown, take the deal. Like, this is just money up front plus however much you're going to make on the Epic Store. Right.
Where they get a higher cut of the money anyway.
Yeah, it's irresponsible almost how they're saying no.
I think
they think that it's going to sell millions or more than 1 million copies is what he said. And like, how much did like Mortal Kombat most recent make?
11?
Yeah.
I believe it was the best-selling game the month it came out.
Oh,
however,
really?
I don't know how much it actually sold. Doesn't look like hard sales numbers.
Anyway, there's no chance that Samurai Showdown is going to sell that much. Like,
no.
What do you do? Kudos to believing in yourself, but
I'm sitting here in an uninformed perspective. I think they're making the financial mistake here, but I've made my biases clear. I do not like the Epic Games Store. So anytime a company turns down exclusivity with them, I'm going to chalk it up as a great decision.
Okay. That was that. Here's something that's not a great decision. Pokemon deciding that they're not going to put all of the characters in Sword and Shield.
Yes.
Gotta Catch 'em All is no longer
an option. So there's this companion app, I believe, is a premium service. You pay to have this privilege where you can...
Home,
Pokemon Home, yes, thank you. I called it an app. You can upload versions of your Pokemon from previous games and then import them into future games.
Pokemon Bank, or one of the two, right?
I believe so.
And if you try to import the ones that aren't going to be programmed
compatible
into Sword and Shield.
And is this... I'm ignorant on subjects related to Pokemon. Is this the first time you have not been able to bring anyone you want into the game?
Oh, yeah. This is every other game of Pokemon. You have been able to bring in your guys from previous games. This will be the first game. And even though the creators are like, hey, this doesn't mean that future games won't have all the dudes, but their excuse for not being able to put all the guys in Sword and Shield was that it would take too much time and money. Chris, how much money does Pokemon have?
They've got a big budget.
They are the most wealthy franchise ever. More than Star Wars, more than Mickey Mouse. They have infinite cash.
Now, not all of that is going to be directly flowing into the video games, right?
They got merch to do, they got anime to do, they got film to do.
And the trading cards and...
But to say that it would cost too much time, first of all, yeah, there is a schedule to keep up with like the toys and stuff. But at what cost? You can't spit in the face of people who have collected every character with like all the special attributes and the shinies. You know, people go crazy for shinies. And just tell them, we're not going to follow through with it. Because didn't they, like, on the most previous game, they spent a lot of time on it just to, like, up-res all the 3D models for purposes in the future. And then if you look at the animations in Sword and Shield, look at the character Wingull is a bird Pokemon. And they said that, it would take too much time to animate all the walking cycles, because every Pokemon has an attack movement and they're walking around in the overworld now. And when they die, they have like a unique faint animation, or at least they did in Pokemon Coliseum. Look at these Wingulls. I'm just showing him a clip of the game footage. This bird Pokemon is like a Harrier jet. You know what those are? The ones that just like hover in the air.
There is zero wing flapping going on.
It's just gliding in place and like turning. It's the most robotic animation. And literally, a student went ahead and fixed it, going through programming the animation. Like, this is like 24 hours worth of work just to do like the simplest sort of stuff. And to say that Pokemon doesn't have the manpower or the finances to make this game what it should be. Have you seen this meme? This is the joke that people are having. So this is the Galaxy meme that we're talking about, where the brain keeps getting bigger and bigger. And this is Pokemon's interpretation. Remove contests. Those were in Ruby and Sapphire. Remove seasons. Remove super training. I don't even know what that is. Remove Dex navigation. Remove PSS. That means like player search system. Remove mega evolutions. You heard about megas, right? Where like you give Charizard the big thing and it turns even bigger. It's not going to be in Sword and Shield. Remove following Pokemon. That was in like Yellow and Heart Gold, Soul Silver. Remove Battle Frontier. Remove National Dex. And then the very last one, where it's supposed to be like the most intelligent thing, is remove Pokemon from Pokemon. So that's all fun and games. Do you have a takeaway? You've only played Let's Go Eevee.
Right.
So this really doesn't matter to you because, oh no, all these hundreds of characters you don't know yet aren't going to be in this game. So you have no losses.
Right. I'm not emotionally invested in this.
You have no Poochyena in this fight.
I would like to play devil's advocate, though.
Okay.
So on one hand, I have to realize that for a franchise whose tagline is "Gotta catch them all," there's a certain expectation there that they have set themselves up with.
Uh-huh.
On the other hand, Heath, do you have a ballpark estimate to me how many Pokemon exist right now?
I should actually know this. It's like 740 or before Sword and Shield. So this is gens 1 through 7. For every one that I'm off by, I have to I don't know, do push-ups, or I don't know. What's my punishment? I think 745. So right now I'm scrolling down on Bulbapedia. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm excited to find out.
We got lots to scroll through. Sorry, I'm getting caught between the monitors. 809.
Okay, and that is
not including these are the starters for the upcoming games. They are not registered yet. 809. So I was off by at least like 55.
We'll decide your punishment later.
That's not how that works.
So we're looking at 800 plus Pokemon here.
And we love every single one of them. Even Chatot.
If you say so. Anyway, that is 800 different Pokemon who have to be balanced for combat against each other to make it a fair and level playing field.
It's just stat values. That's it.
Yeah, but
they gotta be balanced. I mean, they have been balanced since like it's an iterative thing. They're not reinventing the wheel.
I think too, like the series Smash Bros. And how they've been balanced in previous games, but in the next game they add some new fighters and they
cut Ice Climbers from Wii U,
right?
And Pichu and Wolf.
So the latest Smash Bros. Ultimate, they finally included everyone.
Everyone is here.
Ones. And Sakurai, he looks like he's aging rapidly.
You're saying
he's losing his vitality working on this and balancing and tweaking all those. And there are only 70 and some change fighters in Smash Bros. This is over 800 Pokemon that all need to be meaningfully different from one another. Otherwise, why bother? And have to be balanced for one another. And as you go up in number, the number of different interactions that can happen between that number of Pokemon exponentially increases.
Multiplicative, yeah.
They can't do it forever, right? At someday, it will not be feasible to balance and include every single Pokemon. Maybe that day is coming earlier than it should, but like for this to be a realistic product, it has to happen someday, right?
Yes. At the rate at which we're adding, because we were going to add, historically, we were about to add another like 100 to 150 new guys with Gen 8. Or are we in Gen 8? I think. Definitely doesn't feel like something that you can just keep up forever, especially with the level of graphical enhancement that we're actually trying to achieve. If this is the best we can do. My solution is just give it to Genius Sonority. You know who Genius Sonority is, right?
I do not.
There's like the Pokemon Company, and then there's the guys who actually make the game. That's Game Freak. You're familiar.
Yep.
Genius Sonority are the guys that made Pokemon Coliseum and XD.
Ah. Who made Pokemon Snap?
The like photo taking thing? Yeah. I don't know, but we should also consider them. Yeah. Get them on the phone. Pokemon Coliseum, because another criticism is like the animations are just like clip art that's overlaid on the opponent's thing. And that didn't used to be the case. Back in Pokemon Coliseum, you actually had your Bulbasaur walk over and vine whip that bitch on the other side of the field, and it looked great. Or you know, your whatever. I'm just memory lane here. Genius Sonority, they did quality Pokemon, and I'm not saying put them all in, but give it the love that they did back in the day.
Yeah, I see both sides. I'm not a huge fan of Game Freak and their work. If I was criticizing Insomniac for coloring in the lines a little bit too much for Spider-Man, Game Freak is guilty of that exponentially more. Yeah. They don't take very many risks at all between iterations of Pokemon. I see both sides of the debate here.
All right. Well, we will see if this meme comes into fruition. That's that story. On to the next one. Netflix's The Witcher.
Ooh, you have my attention.
All right. So Chris, resident The Witcher fan that he is.
Yeah.
We have the poster for The Witcher, and there's also the front of it. Geralt is played by Henry Cavill, who you know from Superman.
Superman, yeah.
It's also said that he is in the best physical shape of his life for the role, enlisting the help of a competitive bodybuilder. So Geralt is going to be totally jacked when he does the hot tub scene.
Yes.
Isn't there? There's quite a few romantic moments in The Witcher. Anyway, the Netflix show, is written by the guys who made, or the girl, worked on Daredevil. My question to you, Chris, is this your Game of Thrones replacement?
I am treading on thin ice here, Heath. I'm trying to be super cautious when it comes to my expectations for this show.
Are they going to jump the shark of one of your favorite video game franchises?
I think it's fair to say it is my favorite video game franchise. So, obviously, I'm going into this expecting to be extremely let down.
Oh, okay.
Extremely let down. So if there's any redeeming factors about this, they will come as pleasant surprises instead of failing to meet my sky high expectations.
Okay.
Because the ending of the Game of Thrones sent me spiraling into depression, and I don't need to go through that again.
Oh no.
Yeah, I've been following this. I had been subscribed to like the Witcher subreddit for a while. Really? And so I was around for when they announced like the casting announcements for who will be playing who. And there was some large amounts of skepticism surrounding that. Basically, people who aren't known for a whole lot of acting, there was some prominent characters had their races changed for their actors, counterparts portraying them.
Did they Polish wash?
No, it was seemingly there was a lot of color for a show set in middle of nowhere Poland.
Oh, yeah. They Ariel'd it. They Little Mermaid it.
I guess you could say that.
What's her name? Halle Bailey? Halle Bailey has been cast as Ariel in the Little Mermaid live action. And she's African American. Whereas Ariel is Dutch? But she's a mermaid, so who cares?
But I mean, in the Witcher games, basically almost everyone except for a few foreign travelers are white.
Is an Andrew Sapkowski looking guy, yeah.
So if I'm going to see this new take on the series, I'm open to seeing some different interpretations on the characters. It just comes down for me like
casting based on merit rather than diversity.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure they didn't fill this cast just to fill a quota, I'm sure. I'm sure there will be some pleasant surprises in the mix here.
All right. That's it for The Witcher. Other news, Toby Fox had a tweet about Deltarune Chapter 2 that I had to follow up on. He was just basically saying how people were asking him what the current progress on it was. And as he stated previously, he's not going to release until all the new chapters are completed. However many years it takes. That's exactly what his words. And the major consensus is take your time, Toby. I will wait forever. Take your time. There's so much love for Toby Fox because he's like the guy. And I totally am with him.
That warms my heart.
Isn't that great? Because people are like, give us the new thing. Where's Skyrim 2? Where's, Yeah.
Because this was the case for Undertale. He's mostly a one-man team. I think that he put out a call for like help on Deltarune.
It's him, Temmie Chan, and then like a very small selection of acolytes.
And I think that's pretty transparent. So people are being pretty like lenient with how long they expect this to take.
Time for my bit this episode. There was a video game released with what I think most would consider is the worst video game title ever. And It is, are you familiar with the King of Fighters series?
I've heard it mentioned.
Okay, well, are you familiar with the King of Fighters? So it's, okay, wait, I should have set this up way better. The King of Fighters is a fighting game franchise. I think it's Chinese. It's SNK is the developers of it. And they most recently announced a game in which you can romance the fighters that you usually would fight with. So just picture lots of buff anime dudes that you can get to know. But they titled the game The King of Fighters for Girls. And I'm looking at Chris's face. And he shares in my bewilderment. Chris, who has the right to be most upset by this title? Is it gay guys? Because, they might also find this content appealing. Is it girls because they're being pigeonholed? God forbid you're an actual girl who plays the King of Fighters. You gotta play this game now. The King of Fighters series? It's for boys, we got fighting games, This got me thinking. Let me hear you. What's your takeaway? What's your takeaway on this?
Let's go with shock and bewilderment, as you said. Who okayed this in the marketing department?
Oh, it's just China. Just,
Do you think this is like some snafu in translation? They didn't. I don't know what to make of this.
Maybe it's not as egregious in not English. But anyway, time to go over Heath's picks for the worst video game titles. We have Touch Dick. Are you familiar with Touch Dick?
Not at all.
It was a DS game That is just a dick stands for dictionary.
Yeah.
But that is literally the cover art.
So the full name is Touch Dictionary, but they abbreviated it to DIC on the cover?
That's right, DIC. That's a very important distinction. Exclusively to South Korea. So it was never really meant for us, I think.
Got it.
We have Guilty Gear Xrd. That's also another fighting game. I don't want to say that this is just haha, Japan has goofy titles, but definitely some weird naming conventions come out of that country. The series goes like Guilty Gear X and then Guilty Gear XX. And then they work their way to Xrd, like it's supposed to be third, but they're calling it Xrd. I don't know.
This seems a lot less egregious than the other two.
Oh yeah, it won't be super egregious. Are you familiar with the Toho franchise?
Not even a little bit.
Okay, so it's a bullet hell game.
Oh, okay.
But there's no shortage of cutesy characters. The titles for these games. This is appeared on the Super Best Friend cast. They played Toho or Noho, in which you guess a fan submitted a list of sound-alike titles, and you had to distinguish like the real ones from the fake ones. It's like the game we played. I was considering playing that game with you, but it would be really, really hard to parse which ones. So let's just go over some of the heavy hitters here. We have Shoot the Bullet, Phantasmagoria of Flower View, Double Spoiler, Immaterial and Missing Power.
Yeah.
Double Dealing Character. It's just a bunch of nonsense titles, but that's the Toho series.
Yeah, that's a lot of just gibberish.
There's also Blaze Blue Chrono Phantasma. Are you familiar with this one?
No.
It's yet another Japanese fighting game. Just a bunch of nonsense when you like actually try to read it, and you can imagine like moms at GameStop reading the spines of these games and thinking like, what? Who actually play these? And then lastly, ones that's not of Japanese origin. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Are you familiar with this game?
I might have heard of it.
It is old. It is based on the Harlan Ellison novel. It's a point and click. It's really, really old. One of the least inviting game titles. Definitely deals with like some serious issues. It's pretty well acclaimed.
Right. Yeah, I've heard of it.
From way back in 1995.
It was on Halloween that came out.
Or yeah, it came out Halloween, the year of my birth. Yeah, pretty wacky title, but definitely not as unforgivable as The King of Fighters for Girls.
Yeah, I think that one takes it.
So that was this episode's Heath bit.
Lots of fun.
Do we have an ad?
No.
Okay.
But we have something better than an ad, Heath.
We do.
We have politics.
Yeah, you brought that up.
So, just over the past couple of weeks, we've had several video game related politics stories come up.
What are you talking about?
3 in particular. I was trying to think of a way to turn this into a game. Maybe you can like rate which one you think is most significant to least significant. Anyway,
Sure.
Here we go. 3 quick stories of video games rearing their head in politics, which, typically when that happens, you would think of in the 90s how there were big outcries against the violence in Mortal Kombat and the scandalousness of Night Trap and how that led to the formation of the ESRB to rate games and have games police themselves. Well, here's some maybe slightly better examples of them coming up in politics. And we have Bernie Sanders to start with.
Is this recent?
Yes, end of June.
like right after the debates for the 2020 election.
Yeah. Bernie Sanders came out and took a position on the gaming industry's push for unionization.
Right, because he's big union all the time.
He is. And you hardly see politicians like taking a stance on this subject, but he was all for it. He said the workers responsible for that profit he's referencing is how tremendously financially successful the video games industry is.
They are.
He said the workers responsible for that profit deserve to collectively bargain as part of a union. And then, as all this is going on, he started his own Twitch channel. Senator Bernie Sanders is on Twitch.
I have to see this. I thought I saw a screenshot at one point.
It's worth noting he is not the first politician to start a Twitch channel, or even the first presidential candidate or hopeful. I think Andrew Yang is running. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was a joke, part of the Democratic debate. He like said next to nothing. Wait, is this a joke? I think this is. They took his picture-in-picture. Yeah, he's playing photoshops of him playing PT.
My favorite one is
going to the strip club.
Photoshops of him on the bridge that
PewDiePie was on.
Yeah, that one. It's worth noting he has not yet streamed any games. I think his channel mainly consists of
speaking to camera,
promotional material, and political stuff. Mm-hmm. But maybe in a not so distant future, we'll have Bernie Sanders streaming Fortnite for your enjoyment.
Collab with Ninja. That is absolutely his campaign's first priority on the Twitch front is getting with Ninja.
Do you think this is a play to like appeal to a certain demographic?
How could it not be?
Yeah. But he's popular with younger folks, I'd say.
I need to see. Yes, that's absolutely true.
So he's doubling down on that image.
Let's go to chat reaction or something like that. This might be like too fresh of a news story. I'm not seeing... Because the chat has to be hilarious. Yeah, look at the chat. Look at him go. It must be in slow mode. That's why. Yeah, I see that slow mode.
Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise they'd be just spamming.
You wouldn't be able to read anything.
Uh-huh. This looks like just a speaking. Like going back to where he was in like the quintessential Twitch cube that is foam behind you, and then one of our mics. That's funny. Okay, yeah.
All right, that was video games and politics number 1. Transitioning outside of American politics, taking a little jump across the lake to the UK.
Not what I would expect.
We had Electronic Arts meet with the UK.
Oh, yeah.
The UK Parliament's Digital, Culture, Media and Sport Committee.
So, folks,
to discuss whether Electronic Arts games were leading to addiction and introducing children to gambling.
Well, you're referring to the certain container.
We are talking about loot boxes here.
Chris, we don't say that word anymore.
Oh, you're right. That's a dirty word. What do we call them?
We call them surprise mechanics now.
Surprise mechanics. Which is a very quotable, very
surprise, funny... your child spent all of your money.
What a pleasant surprise that would be.
Like, does that fool anybody? The woman that they got to speak in front of who is it? Like the Irish gambling committee or some, I thought the guy sounded Irish, where he's saying like, do you really think this is an ethical practice?
Right. They were asked whether they think the randomized items in loot boxes was ethical.
In the EA game specifically.
Yes.
And that lady's like, oh yeah, it's totally ethical. You know how Kinder eggs are a delicious treat that children can open up and get a toy out of? They don't necessarily know what's in it. That's like a surprise mechanic. To which everyone is like, you buy the Kinder egg and get the toy, but it's there's no randomization. Okay, there is randomization with Kinder eggs, but it's not like, ooh, if you spend just a little more, they're not trying to, you know what I'm trying to say?
Probably.
How it was a bad analogy on EA's part.
Are you saying how, like, maybe of the toys that are in Kinder Eggs, there's not some that are, like, highly coveted and sought after, while in some of these digital packs, there are items that are, like, people really want to get.
What you were actually trying to get.
Yeah.
There's an assortment of the loot box items that, you know, the excitement is trying to get the greatest value out of them
extract as much money
at the expense of your mom's credit card.
Right. I guess I didn't do my full homework here. I'm not sure to what end this meeting was held, whether it was to look into making the selling of loot boxes illegal, or they ask if it's ethical. Maybe this was something not quite as severe as completely outlawing them.
No decision was really made at this conference. It was just like Ireland was basically being like, EA, you're stupid. Of course it's gambling.
Just as a tangent here, would you classify loot boxes and microtransactions as with an element of chance as gambling?
As full-on gambling?
To the extent where they need to be
regulated.
They need to regulated as the same way as other gambling is.
Well, if it's not regulated, it's only going to get stronger and more potent. There needs to be some document that details, hey, if you're making the next Winnie the Pooh game, you can't put the honey pot behind a paywall that the infants who are too stupid to realize that it's just full-on price gouging of microtransactions. That needs to be regulated at some extent, because we're smart. The people who are playing these adult-ish games, we can take into account, you know, this. You can't necessarily spend all of your money on this, but the kids, it's all for the kids.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like these kind of things. I think gaming would be actively better without it, but there's a couple things I do. There's one thing I like about it, mainly
it generates so much money.
It generates so much money.
It's totally worth the controversy. If everyone's, you know, like wagging the finger, who cares? You're making oodles more on your margins.
Right. A full-price video game has been $60 for quite some time now. I think it was like 2005, 2006 when they set that price. They upped it from $50 to $60. And, you know, the price of developing these games has risen over those past 15 years now, as well as inflation has happened, and the price has remained the same. I think largely because all the money made on microtransactions has been subsidizing that cost. They've been making up the loss of just that $60 doesn't go as far as it used to because of inflation, but they're reaping the rewards of the people willing to pay for these loot boxes and microtransactions, and that's offsetting that delta, that difference.
Plus, we've been driving our game devs into the ground and not paying them, or just severing them as soon as they finish level 5.
Right. I think what does need to happen is there needs to be more transparency around what exactly your odds are when you buy these things. Because there could be, you know, the people who program the odds of what items do you get, for all we know, they could actually
they have the keys to the castle.
They could, without anyone knowing any better, lock you out of certain items that you really want until you spend a certain threshold of money.
Yeah, you wouldn't know unless you run the simulation indefinitely.
And you would need a lot of capital to do that.
Yeah.
So we need more of that. Here's a question I was wondering. I don't know if you know this offhand. One comparison loot boxes are often made with are buying a pack of trading cards at the store, like Pokémon cards or something.
Yeah, the TCG.
Are the odds of getting like certain rarities public knowledge on those card packs?
I know that the most recent sets of Pokémon cards, each one of them will have a certain like rare. It has to have at least one holographic card, and then one equally as, because some of the Pokemon cards that are worth the most or the most coveted have like this much larger art that sort of breaks out of the boundaries of the boxes.
Of the
they
border,
really look
yeah.
great, these new ones. They'll sometimes be shiny, like reflective, and then they'll sometimes be like a totally different art style that it just shouts like value. Each set will have at least one of those cards. It might be a duplicate from like another booster pack, but definitely when you go through the Pokemon, because I've watched enough unboxing of these Pokemon sets, it's really fun to actually watch.
Someone else open
Max
them.
Mofo is the guy that does this online. What he does is he'll unlock the pack, take the top 3 cards, and put them behind, so that last card is that large art, holographic, reverse reflective, super rare Mewtwo. And that's for each pack. Granted, some of them are lackluster, but you're not getting suckered by the Pokemon Company when you rip open a booster pack.
So there are certain guarantees there.
Yeah.
There's like different
You're
tiers.
not going to open a deck of cards and have them all be flat image dittos.
Got it. There's certain tiers to the rarity. So like the topmost tier, the super legendary
the
one.
The big shiny Gyarados.
Do you know if it's publicized what your % chance of opening one of those is?
It's not going to say how many are in circulation, but it's going to say, this is like a hidden print of like one of like 30. I think the information that details the rarity of the card is out there.
Okay. And I would want that same kind of transparency for these loot boxes.
Yeah.
That's about all I had for that one. Moving on to the third and final example of video games in politics news.
Are we going to like NASA next?
This is the one I was most interested in.
Okay.
Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo joining forces to send a warning to the Trump administration about the upcoming proposed tariffs and how they would affect the video game industry.
We hinted about this a few episodes ago.
We did. We didn't dive into it then. I have an exact quote here from the letter they sent to the Trump administration. Economically, the video game industry contributes substantially to the U.S. economy, and its year-on-year growth is impressive. The U.S. video game industry generated total revenue of $36 billion in 2017 and $43.4 billion in 2018, reflecting over 20% in growth. This industry directly and indirectly employs more than 220,000 people. 99.7% of video game companies qualify as small businesses and can be found in each of the 50 states.
Wow, I didn't think about that.
Many develop software for video games across the range of platforms from PCs to mobile, including the video game consoles that we manufacture and are an integral part of the booming app economy. They go on to cite how video game consoles are sold at razor-thin margins, especially at the very start of a console generation.
I believe that.
In fact, it's not that uncommon for them to sell at a loss early on in the generation because they really want consoles in the hands of people. Because
once they're in circulation, they'll make up for...
all the money is made on software sales. They never really make a big profit on the hardware.
Wow.
So they want as many people to have these in their house.
That's
so that
why
they're buying
Sega
software.
jumped to software.
Right. Now, the advantage of producing your own console is that every piece of software sold on it, you're taking that 30% cut, presumably, which is why Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft still make the consoles. So that means if the proposed 25% increase in price hit the consoles coming out of China, which 96% of consoles that are produced in the world are being made in China.
Mm-hmm.
If that were to happen, the companies could not. They're already unsustainable. They're already taking a small loss. They can't eat another 25%. That would have to be entirely passed on to the consumer. And suddenly, video game consoles, which are already like towing the line of being a luxury product,
a $500 console,
suddenly they're completely out of reach for a large portion of the market.
Uh-huh.
And to start off a generation that way would be pretty disastrous. tariffs in general, they're put in place to protect an economy from foreign products flowing in.
Yeah, probably the Trump argument is that like this would bolster American-made consoles,
of which there are none.
None.
So
no
there's
chance.
there's no alternative that's gonna flip here.
I'd be blown away if like the America box was in development.
So tariffs make a lot of sense when there is that alternative homegrown product that exists. There isn't in the case of video game consoles.
Are they thinking it'll emerge?
If they're thinking that, it's like a pie in the sky chance of that ever happening.
I guess so, yeah.
My take on it is I would be amazed if this goes through as it's currently proposed and affects video game consoles that dramatically. It would be suicide.
Is this video, because this is not just exclusively the video game tariff.
Right.
This is a blanket tariff on China.
Yeah.
Are they thinking that this is going to like, because this will hit the video game industry heavily. Are we going to, GDP wise, make up the losses in like American made soap dispensers? Like what else is manufactured in China? Like that we are going to, over however many years, recoup what we lost in this tariff? I know you don't have the answer on hand.
I mean, from what I've heard,
it'd have to be substantial if you're considering gutting the video game industry like this.
Yeah, it would have to be substantial. I didn't get the impression that this tariff was going to be in effect for years and years. That seems like too long of a window to me.
We're just doing it like a quick and dirty.
For all I know, this is all about posturing and making threats to get a better deal in the trade war.
You can threaten much better ways. Do a diss track.
But it's interesting. It would probably cripple it would cripple the next generation of consoles. No one would buy them. I don't think so. If this went through as it's currently proposed. But we will see.
But I have big plans for the next generation.
They're not coming until the second half of 2020, we think. So we have a while for this to work itself out. But I thought it was interesting to see all three console manufacturers banding together to like say, we really can't have this happen.
Yeah, they haven't done that since the great...
They were all on stage together at the Game Awards. It was Phil Spencer and Sean Layden.
Only two people can unite the video game giants, Jeff Keighley and Donald Trump.
Yeah. That's all I had for video games and politics.
Okay, and if I had to attribute an emotion to each of these stories, I would say Bernie, mild anticipation. It'll be fun to see how, not what he does, but what the Twitch chat does with his, reactions. If he's just like, oh my God, a creeper just took out my investment. This is my Bernie impression. Anyway, EA is totally scheming, and I'm happy to hear that the European equivalent of the ESRB is cracking down on it, because this is why governments are here, is to keep the would-be child casinos at bay. And then, tariff is bad. It'll mess things up. Like, or maybe, I don't know what would emerge. I don't want to think that things wouldn't just, I wouldn't want to think that it'd be a total loss on the part of the video games things. I think other ventures would rise to the occasion. Not saying like a Ouya would appear, but
if this went through exactly as it's currently projected to, and if they don't give a single inch, what I think would happen is all those next gen projects get put on the back burner and people continue developing for the current gen consoles, the consoles people currently have, as like a stopgap until
that's kind of weak.
Weak?
No, I mean, I wouldn't prefer that.
Oh, got it. I could see it. I could see developers doing that until the prices came back down.
Okay. Politics.
Is that all we have for this week in news?
That's all I got.
Me too, yeah. We have an email, which we will read when we come back after this break.
Chris, we're back.
And we're back. All right, first email we've had in a little while.
I'm excited.
This one's tough to parse.
Okay.
Okay. Not all of this is quite suitable for reading. Hello, Chris, Sir, and Heather.
Suffixes.
First off, really enjoy the show. I have been an avid follower on Spotify pretty much since the beginning of the podcast.
Okay.
Really enjoys the theme music. Thinks it's pretty intense. I am well aware that your podcast is based on video games, but I heard through the grapevine that you guys are also ultra board game fans as well. Mm-hmm. I was curious if you will ever have a board game focused episode. If that's a no, maybe you could go over the differences in dynamics between a multiplayer involvement in a board game versus involvement in a video game.
Wait, multiplayer involved? It's just like, people on the other side of the table?
Yeah, how the dynamic changes.
However we interpret it. Okay.
Sorry for the long email. And that comes to us from Lindsay.
Okay. Cool. I also think that the music is really cool. It was a good find by Chris. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's no secret. Chris and I have played more than our fair share of board games.
We brought up Innis or Inish, depending on how you pronounce it, on this very one.
A now classic. It's in our circulation. We play that regularly.
Pretty often, yeah.
With 2 or 3 other folks. It's an area control game. There's like of the board games that we have, our collective thing. There are like social deduction games like The Resistance and Spyfall and Coup, and we're just gonna name drop here. We got Codenames, which is like a word association deduction game.
Yeah.
And my new favorite, I love Decrypto. Decrypto is an amazing game in which you have to pull off like the most specific references with your partners in an effort to confuse the opposing team.
Yeah, it feels like you feel like you're trying to crack the Enigma code or something. You're intercepting these incoming signals that have been encrypted, and you're trying to parse them, make sense of them to try to relate them back to what the true word is.
Yeah. Decrypto is the new hotness as far as board games go. Other old favorites have been Dixit, Mysterium. Those are also like
good for big groups.
Yeah. Werewolf is probably one that most people would be familiar with of this list. We'll save like the really in-depth ones for later, I guess. But the other end of this question was like, are we ever going to do a deep dive on board games? I don't think so. I think if you want that kind of content, I would recommend Tabletop with Will Wheaton. That's on the Geek and Sundry's channel.
I believe so.
Yeah, it's a comprehensive. They play all the games that we play and more. Or no, they don't play area control necessarily.
Not so much.
They'll do a Ticket to Ride and a Catan.
My favorite board game content creators are the guys at Shut Up and Sit Down.
Oh yeah,
Quentin Smith, Matt Lees, and formerly Paul Dean. They're kind of the only the duo now is still there, but they're a British group who always makes the reviews. They don't so much get into rules explanations. They more tell you about how the game feels, and they don't bother with the mechanics so much, more like the criticisms, the analysis part of each game.
Secret Hitler is this type of game, and then
they do so in an entertaining way. They're very comedic.
So go to those channels if you're looking for board games. Dude, I totally would have filmed us playing a game or two if we had the production for it. You totally need everybody on lavs.
Yeah.
And I only have like the one lav.
Gotcha.
Lavalier mic. And then cameras, you need like a top, like one for the board, one for like each player, you know. We do almost have enough to do this live, but I would want like a camera there and then a camera there to get, you know.
Yeah.
And then the multiplayer aspect of board games.
Yeah. Do you feel the dynamic changes very much when you're playing a video game in a multiplayer setting versus a board game?
Well, it depends. I think at its best, I get the same amount of utility from both mediums, despite how displaced I am from my opponents, I would think. When I think of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood multiplayer, I think of the time where, you know how that game is, you're constantly putting on disguises, blending in with crowds so you can get up close for like the assassination kills. I can totally remember I was running around as like the banker, and the person I was hunting knew to look for the banker. And then I walk around a corner, I disguise myself as like the baker. Lots of B professions in this town. And then I walk back around the corner at the speed at which all the NPCs are floating around. I join the crowd where my target is. I stand ever so casually next to him, waiting for like the proximity meter, because the closer you are to your target and just sit there and let it stew, the score multiplier is like wow. And then once my disguise is starting to lose it's about to wear off, I go for like the kill, and it's like, ooh, you know, even my opponent is probably on the other side of the state. It's like, get wrecked, son. And I feel that same way when we play Innis, and it's like, boom, you thought I was gonna lose a guy. Here's a deed for you, sucker. And you know, even though I'm within arm's reach, I still get that that excitement from board games as I do for well-designed video game multiplayers.
You had a lot of energy there.
Dude,
I liked it.
Man, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood was the best. Once you get into that high level perks and mechanics. Same go for all of our board games, man. We should play it right after this.
Yeah.
Although not, because we've been doing this for 2 hours and a half.
My take on it is board games have largely replaced my interest in playing multiplayer video games. I think it says a lot when my go-to default, once in a blue moon, when I do boot up a video game for multiplayer, my go-to default is to check if that game has any microphone capability and then mute all of that. Video games now, more so than ever, give you the capability to talk to people from anywhere around the world, and a large section of people immediately disable that feature. It's not an environment I enjoy interacting with other people in. Well,
yeah, because you're not playing with your friends on these multiplayer occasions. You're playing with Spanish speakers and babies.
Right. People I'd rather not so much hear from.
Wow. Your words, not mine.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mute them. I mute everyone, and then I mute myself.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want people listening in
God
on me.
forbid you're sitting in a room with other person, and then, like, your multiplayer opponent shouts obscenities that you immediately have to explain.
That is true, what you said. If whenever I played a board game, it was always with a random mix of people I've never met before, it would probably
You'd find a new hobby.
It would lose a lot of its appeal. Yeah. But the extent to which you can interact with another human, video games, I feel like, are a much thicker filter. Your interactions become a much more limited by the game.
This is excluding like VR chat. You know VR chat, right?
I do know VR chat. That's where you both have a headset on, and there's kind of like a physical presence there. It's
just a chat room where you're literally just looking around.
The potential for negotiation and striking a deal.
Yeah, no chance of doing like an agenda phase.
And, like concealing information, having like lying to an opponent or trying to haggle with them. I've never seen any of those mechanics pulled off well in a video game.
It's unexecutable. You can't achieve that.
Or if
a video game.
Or if it is achievable, it's very hard to do because I haven't seen it done yet. Well, those are pretty commonplace in the board game sphere. Now, of course, they require like a certain level of familiarity with the other players, but if you've assembled people together to play a board game, presumably you know them to some extent. And I get a lot more fulfillment out of that kind of multiplayer experience than in a online shooter.
There are video game versions of some of our board games.
There are.
Like
That's
Scythe.
Right. Scythe has a version on Steam.
Codenames.
Does it?
Yes.
Okay.
At least like a really simple Flash version.
And, there's Tabletop Simulator, a whole video game about having a table that you can plug and play like any board game onto.
And I haven't played any of them, the video game varieties.
I have messed around with Tabletop Simulator, and I think it does a decent job. However, I haven't booted it up in years because, like the real thing, I don't know, maybe it's being trite to say this, but there's an extra layer of magic doing it like in a physical space with,
atop a table.
Atop a table. That said, I'll probably play the multiplayer of the next Halo game that comes out. Assuming that console is affordable because of tariffs.
Because of tariffs, yeah. But yeah, that's if we'll see. We might play a board game here or there. And upload it.
Maybe if we come up with a good idea of how to do it, we could do a board game special episode.
There's like logistics involved, yeah. Thank you, Lindsay, for your question.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in this episode.
Yeah, if you're still awake, this thing was a banger. Listen to how long this was.
This was episode 19. You can write to us just like Lindsay at mobiustubespodcast@gmail.com.
And send us stuff on Twitter at MobiusTubes.
I'd prefer if you sent us stuff on Venmo, but either will do. And that's a wrap.